Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. Today is Sunday, June 28th in the year 2026, and I am Deb McBride, recording this for you in lovely Escazú, Costa Rica, where it is still sunny and the sun hasn't set yet. So, a bright, lovely day. I think the week ahead is somewhat intense. And I mentioned this last week on the podcast. And we're going to get rolling on this because a lot's going on. And Mercury goes retrograde tomorrow at 1:36 p.m. Eastern Time, tomorrow the 29th. This is the end of June. These are the last days of June. And it has been feeling like Mercury went retrograde, 10 days ago, to me anyway. So many things have happened that are confusing and out of control and weird and misinformed that I feel like this maybe by the time it actually retrogrades tomorrow afternoon, it's going to become something less about confusion and stuff, and maybe there'll be some clarity and some realizations and breakthroughs and stuff, which I always hope for during Mercury retrograde, because it's a time to step within and step back and kind of sit with yourself and really do some internal work. And so when I've been looking at the events of the last week, it's been kind of bizarre because I've had enough like weird little things that appear to be Mercury retrograde. People, the chocolate fair, the chocolate fair. The chocolate fair. The chocolate fair was supposed to be, according to their posts on social media, last weekend, the 19th, 20th, 21st. And then there was a post on their Facebook page, the chocolate fair people, that it was going to be the 26th and the 27th. And meantime, it still said the 19th, 20th, and 21st. So one post had two different weekends. And then, so we went there. I think I mentioned this last week. We went there Saturday and there was nothing. We went to the National Stadium where there was nothing. And so I complained on their Facebook page, and other people complained after my complaint. I complained in Spanish, and people were saying, hey, we went there in the rain, which was last Sunday, and there was nothing. We went there for nothing. And people were annoyed, and people brought their kids and strollers and things. And then still they weren't promoting it for yesterday and Friday. And we were curious and not trusting them. And then finally in the comments on their Instagram, in the comments on one of the posts, they said, due to logistical issues, we've had to cancel. And it was probably because so many people were asking, is this really going to happen? And so it was the weekend before this past weekend. So it was last weekend, right? And then not. And then this past weekend and not. And so they're caught up in a Mercury retrograde thing, pre-shadow, whatever, because they announced this back in May. And in April and May. And they hadn't posted since May. So it was, we're never going to trust them again. But that's like a real Mercury retrograde thing. And interestingly enough, as we're getting closer to Mercury retrograde, they told us they're not having it. So maybe some clarity is going to come with Mercury retrograde. My friend Monica had Tuesday was weird for people. Tuesday we're like, people are asking me what's happening. And she's like, what's happening today? I can't take it. Their whole website went down for their business because a bot came in and interrupted their domain name service somehow, and they got an email about it weeks ago, and she said they thought it was spam, so they ignored it, and it was a real thing, that some bot came in and somehow disconnected their domain name, and so now all of their emails are getting bounced back to their clients, and they had to take everything on WhatsApp instead, and she's got to manage everything there, and so that she's still waiting for them to like restore the website and everything, and their email and their domain name. And then on the same day, she had some kerfuffle with her 14-year-old son and his friend who wanted to build a pond in our garden, and they dug this enormous hole to put a pond in the garden. And the other boy's mother calls and she says, I'm not paying for Piero's pond. And she said, Augustine wants the pond. Your kid wants the pond. My son is just going along with it. And it's Monica's property. Everybody else has an idea for it. And meantime, she's telling her son, no pond. And he's like, oh, Augustine doesn't like you anymore. Ooh, a 15-year-old doesn't like me. Oh no. And so finally she enlisted her husband to like talk sense into them and saying, we're not having a pond here. We're not having a pond. You don't want a pond. We're not building a pond. That's it. And the mother of the other kid came over and she's like, I'm not paying for this. And it's like, no, I don't think either one of us should pay for this. This is, it was insane. It was completely zany and very Mercury retrograde because the boy's parents put money into his account. And he says, oh, they paid for it already. But he lied to them and told them it was for something else. So the whole thing was so, I think, Mercury retrograde and so sneaky and so weird that Mercury retrograde has been with us already, even though it doesn't actually happen until tomorrow. Which is kind of disturbing because if it's going to be another one of those retrogrades where things get wacky, that means we've had an extra week or so, week and a half of what appears to be retrograde when it's not been retrograde. And then we've got another 3 weeks of Mercury in retrograde, actually. So things are already nuts. So, so there's Mercury retrograde, and that's very close to Jupiter. And as I said, it's not going to really, it's going to refrain from conjuncting Jupiter. It's not going to get to Jupiter. It's backed away, and Jupiter's moving forward because, as we know, Jupiter enters Leo on Tuesday, and that's at 1:52 a.m. Eastern time, which is going to be 11:52 tomorrow night for me. And Jupiter in Leo is really something, that only comes around once every 12 years, obviously, and stays for 13 months. And it's really quite sparkly because Jupiter is abundance and expansion, and Jupiter makes things bigger. Jupiter makes things bigger and bolder and brighter and expands and blows things up, blows up the balloon, inflates the raft, inflates the hot air balloon, right? So it's one of those planets that's really bold and bright and moves us into a bigger direction. It doesn't want us to stay small, right? So Jupiter is going to expand your life wherever you have Leo in your chart. Now, if you don't know where you have Leo in your chart, because Leo is somewhere in your chart, then you should come for an astrology session with me. And I can explain to you where Jupiter is going. And if you have Jupiter in Leo, you are going to have a Jupiter return. So you want to look a little more deeply at why and what Jupiter is doing. Why is it doing what it's doing? If you have Jupiter somewhere, like maybe you have Jupiter in Aquarius and it's going to oppose Aquarius, Jupiter, it's going to expand even more. But it expands whatever it touches. And so Leo is about playfulness. It's about creativity. It's about children and their imagination. And as I was saying the other day here, when you're a kid and you're making up games and you're playing and you're expanding your mind, that's Leo. That's all that good Leo, right? All that fun Leo that we did when we were kids. That's energy. Even if you don't have Leo planets, Leo rules children and the imagination and the creativity that we have, all of us, but we especially have that when we're kids. The sky's the limit when we're kids. We don't know limits. We don't know any of that. We just know, boom, I'm going to play, that I'm a multi-millionaire and I own a mansion and ba, 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 ba. And your imagination, gets fulfilled that way and it expresses itself that way. And in fact, Piero, who's trying to build the pond, he used to, during COVID, he had this whole story about one of the cats that was here, Pantheri, who was this beautiful gray cat and very sweet gray cat. And Pantheri was a billionaire who owned many airlines, and it was Pantheri Airlines, which isn't a bad name for an airline. And he used to build, he was like 6 years old then, 7 years old, and he would build these airports in the garden with all his airplanes. And and he was like, "This is it. I'm building the airport," and he had taken over the garden with the airplanes, and so you had to navigate the airplanes when you came into the garden, and this was Pantetti's airline, and he would tell the stories to his parents' colleagues when he would go to their office, and he would be telling them, and they're like, "Wait, Pantetti really is a cat? Pantetti exists?" And they're like, "Yes, it's a cat. He's just created this fantasy imagination life about Pantetti." And then there was Pantetti Go, which was his takeout service that he was announcing on the WhatsApp chat for the group here, or the community, and we were supposed to order from him, burgers and things and sodas and stuff. And it was named after Panthery. And he was taking the things out of his parents' refrigerator to give everyone. So, so a child's imagination can go very far and big and bold and wide. And we're all encouraged, while Jupiter is in Leo, to come up with some wild imagination, story, project, experience. And yes, Jupiter can get overblown, but so what, while it's in your imagination, if you're coming up with something really cool, you're expanding your imagination, you're expanding your creativity and playfulness. And that's what Jupiter is asking us to do now, while it's going into the sign of Leo for the next 13 months. So I think that's pretty cool and exciting. And I think that there's a little spark of the imagination of the child in all of us, and we have to just remember that and call it in, because it's really it's going to be a balm, I think, during all of this madness that's going on in the world. Yes, Jupiter in Cancer gave us security on some level. We felt secure somewhere in our lives. We were searching for and connecting with security, but Jupiter in Leo asks us to go a step further and really just dream some more. And it's going to be trining Neptune in mid-July. And that's, of course, we're going to get more into that when it's trining Neptune and all the planets are lined up at 4 degrees. And we're going to see that in mid-July. But we're being asked to really open up. And I really think that, it's a wonderful experience. It doesn't happen but once every 12 years. The last time it happened was 2014 to 2015, and it entered in 2014 and left in 2015. And that was, I know I had a good time that year. And it was mid-year like it is now. And so that, I remember, and I saw Jupiter in the sky then with Venus. And it was so incredible. I saw the two of them in the sky the same night. They were very close together, and Jupiter was at the end of Leo, and Venus was in Virgo going retrograde back into Leo, and it was just exquisite. It was exquisite. And, if you can see Jupiter in the sky, I mean, I saw them through a telescope, so I saw the actual planets. But if you can get a chance to see it in a telescope, I highly recommend it, because it's a beautiful planet. It's a beautiful thing. So open your horizons, open your creativity, have fun. Leo's about fun. Don't overindulge. Have fun without overindulging. Try to maintain a certain level of, adulthood, not addiction during Jupiter's transit, but it just use your imagination, have fun, lighten up. When your friends invite you to go out, have some fun, do it. And then tomorrow we also have a full moon, and the full moon is happening at 8 degrees of Capricorn. And I was talking about this last week because 8 degrees Capricorn is 23 of the fixed signs, and it's going by semi-square, and that's going to trigger anything at 23 degrees of the fixed signs. So the moon will go into Capricorn tomorrow at 3:19 a.m. The moon's been void all day today, so it's a lazy Sunday. 3:19 a.m. And it's going to be full at 7:57 p.m. Many hours later, it will be opposite the sun in Cancer. As we know, it's Cancer season. And when they oppose one another, this is the practical Capricorn opposite the secure Cancer. So there are themes of security, practicality, pragmatism, because that's Capricorn. And, also What's interesting about this is that it's 8 degrees of Capricorn, which means it is somewhere between the square between Neptune and Saturn. So it's in Capricorn, they're at both in Aries, and it's 4 degrees away from Neptune. So it's squaring Neptune, and then it's also squaring Saturn. At 8 degrees, it's a wide square to both planets, a wider square to Saturn. But so this is a very interesting full moon. It's going to square Neptune at 12:11 p.m. So the moon is in Capricorn. Of course, first it's going to square Neptune because that's the first planet. It's earlier. And then really on Tuesday at 7:51 a.m. Eastern Time, it's going to square Saturn. So it's moving, it's going to be Monday night that it makes this challenge between the sun and the moon. But in between that point where it's sitting with the sun is the in-between point between the square between Neptune and the square between Saturn and then the moon. So what's happening is, as we know, when the moon goes into Aries once a month, it touches Neptune and then it moves on over to Saturn, which are not really conjunct anymore. They're 10 degrees apart. They're in the same sign. But moon in Capricorn is firstly talking to Neptune and having this conversation, and essentially there's some maybe clarity that wants to emerge, some empathy that wants to emerge, some dynamic between a very practical moon in Capricorn, which is not the moon's favorite place because it loves being in Cancer, the opposite sign, and then Neptune, which is not so practical, but dreamier and more elusive. So you may be in a little emotional thing, and maybe we will get some emotional thing going on, each of us or some of us, because moon square Neptune can be emotional, sensitive, maybe a little more softer than we normally are. So we're maybe a little ouchy sensitive. And then it's going to square Saturn, which is like, oh, got to get over that and just move on. The moon is in Saturn's sign, so maybe that'll be a little less tedious. Maybe it'll just be more practical. Okay, I'm getting over the mood I was in earlier when moon squared Neptune, and I felt, sensitive and overly sensitive. And so it's an interesting dynamic because the moon is not in Aries. It'll be in Aries next week, and it will touch the planets Neptune and Saturn next week, but it's really squaring them, challenging them this week. So what is it that's a challenge? And that Neptune Saturn that we experienced back in February, what was that for you? We were in the middle of the eclipses. What happened for you back at the end of February 20th or so? What was going on that was powerful for you? Because the moon is coming in and now challenging those two planets. And it challenges them every month. Obviously, the moon goes into Capricorn every month, has been challenging them for months, but it's a full moon this time, and the moon is jazzed. It's jazzed by the sun. And so because they're in this dynamic, that means the whole full moon experience is squaring Neptune and then Saturn. Well, of course, we had Sun square Neptune last week, and then we haven't gotten to Sun square Saturn yet because the sun is going to be at 8 degrees during this full moon. So it won't get to Saturn till later on. It won't be there this week. It's more like next week we get Sun square Saturn, Monday the 6th of July. And so that's an interesting dynamic. So there's a lot of information happening tomorrow under this full moon. Pay attention, sit with yourself, notice how you're feeling, notice where you get triggered, what's triggering you, and why this might be very present in your life now. Maybe it's something from your past. Maybe it's something happening in the moment that has roots in your past. But it's nevertheless going to be a very interesting dynamic. Now, these lunations stay with us for a few days. Like when I say new moon, do a ritual, stays for 3 days. Like it's out of the sign. It's not a new moon anymore. Same thing with the full moon. The energy of that stays with us for a few days. So I'm not discounting that it's going to square Saturn on Tuesday, and then, that's it. It's going to square Saturn. It's going to oppose Mercury on Wednesday, and then it's going to go void 7:51 a.m. And it's going to be void most of Wednesday from 7:51 a.m. to 3:33 p.m., a lot of the workday, when it goes into Aquarius. So this is an interesting week for the moon because of that full moon in the sign opposite its sign. It's going to be talking to Neptune. It's going to be talking to Saturn. It's overly sensitive, then cutting itself off. Like, no more. I can't cry another tear. That's it. I'm moving forward. And then when it moves into Aquarius, it's going to oppose Mercury in Cancer, which is retrograde, right? So it's going to talk to the Mercury retrograde that I was just describing. And then it's going to do this opposition to Jupiter newly in Leo, right? So, moon is going to be in Aquarius. It's going to oppose that Jupiter in Leo, and then it's going to move on and conjunct Pluto later that night on Wednesday. So the moon is active tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday. Moon is active, doing things, talking to planets. So I expect a lot of information, a lot of activity in these next 3 days. So pay attention to how you're feeling. Notice the shifts between Neptune and Saturn. Neptune in the afternoon on Monday, Saturn then very early Tuesday morning. So you want to pay attention to what's happening emotionally for you, because then the moon is going to glide on over to Aquarius and then oppose that Jupiter that just stepped into Leo. This is definitely important, okay? It's talking to Jupiter in Leo as soon as it gets there. So this is a very profound few days emotionally. I hope for each of us there's some epiphany, some realization, some opening to something new, especially as it touches Jupiter and then eventually touches Pluto. Jupiter's going to go opposite Pluto, we know, and that's not going to be till that whole 4-degree thing happens later in July. Then we have Mars. Mars today went into the sign of Gemini. It's left Taurus. I already feel more energy. It is high level energy, though. It's kind of high strung. It went in today, not yesterday. And I can, there was a lot of riffraff here last night when I was trying to go to sleep, and the possums went nuts and they were running all over the roofs. They were running on my roofs, my neighbor's roof. They ran into our garage where the lights are the lights go on by their motion sensor lights. So they were turning the lights on and off in the garage because they were running around the garage. They wreaked havoc. They knocked over my orchids. I was very upset. I was having a beautiful morning, and then I went outside and saw that the orchids had been knocked over, and I was not happy. So yeah, that was a something, because I was like, not this, because they just trampled by them, knocked them over, and I had to put it all back together this morning before I even ate breakfast because I was horrified. Anyway, that's Mars and Gemini energy. Little animals. Little animals that are scurrying about. Well, Mars in Gemini is naturally going to have conversations with the outer planets because it's now newly in Gemini, and it has something to say, first of all, to Uranus, which is going to be early in the hours of Saturday, the 4th of July, and it's going to be 2:08 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, the 4th of July, which is Independence Day in the U.S. And like I said last week, watch those fireworks. Be very careful, because Mars-Uranus could be something that gets out of control, right? So Mars in Gemini, Uranus in Gemini, this is something really, really sparkly on a good day and pyrotechnical on a not so good day, okay? So when it's a day of fireworks, those two planets on any day are going to bring fireworks. Uranus is a fireworks kind of planet, and I think Uranus probably rules fireworks. There's electrical things involved, there's sparks, that's Uranus. And so I don't doubt we're going to hear accidents. So there's always accidents on 4th of July, but in US, but there may be something very dramatic that happens because Mars is there. And so be careful if you're near fireworks. I mean, if you're watching them on TV, okay. If you're watching them on the side of the river, fine, but be very careful with the fireworks. So yeah, that's something really, really intense. And it's, Uranus and Mars will be together really all day, even though the aspect will be over by the time people are using fireworks that night. It will, people start lighting the fireworks the day after tomorrow. So, so just be careful, right? And Mars and Uranus traditionally are excitable. And if you are having any sort of discussion with someone, I suggest, especially since Mars is in Gemini, they're in Gemini, both of them are in Gemini, words. Please be careful of your words. If you're having a discussion, don't let it escalate and get heated and start an argument and lose your head, because that is energy under which we lose our head and we say the wrong thing. It's Gemini. This isn't one planet in Gemini. This is two planets in conjunction in Gemini. And this is, somebody telling somebody the wrong thing at the wrong time, and friendships end. And this is watch your words energy like nothing else, okay? Be careful. Cool your jets, stand firmly on the ground, and just breathe, okay? Cool your jets. Let your head calm down. Just get a cold drink, okay? A cold glass of water or lemonade or something, and just chill out, okay? Because between Friday and Saturday, words could be said that you want to take back, especially when Mars sextiles Neptune at 8:44 p.m. on July 4th, later that day. That could mean that, I have to apologize, because that's Neptune, the empathy, the sadness, the deep emotions about what was said. So there's reconciliation because it's a sextile, but please don't even let there need to be a reconciliation. Just watch your words and stay grounded, okay? It's hard under like lightning to stay grounded, but Mars Neptune is a sextile, like I said, and that means it's not a challenge, but I'd still say watch your wallet in crowded places because Mars Neptune is tricky, okay? So, stay soft, stay connected, stay empathic, use empathic words. Be aware. Use your self-awareness. Be clear and be aware, okay? Then the next day, Sunday the 5th, Mars is going to trine Pluto. So from Gemini to Aquarius at 9:07 a.m. So right away. So bang, bang, bang between Saturday morning in the wee hours to mid-morning Sunday, we've got Mars talking to all three outer planets. Now, the best way to use this energy is obviously for transformation, for transcendence, for advancing your life. It's Mars. It's like, yeah, let's go. Let's change my life for the better. Get an idea under Mars Uranus. Use your sensitivity and your intuition under Mars Neptune. Make the transformative shift under Mars trine Pluto. This is a dynamic couple of days that are going to be spectacular if you use the energy wisely. Don't get into an argument. Drive safely. And if you don't have to drive, good. Good if you don't have to drive. And be kind, be thoughtful, be self-aware. But use this energy, my goodness, to light some creative sparks and some fire and some fun and some interesting stuff, right? Mars is ambitious. Mars wants to take the lead. In Gemini, it has a lot to say. It has creative words. It brings intellect to a new level, especially with Uranus, So with the outer planets, it's going to give us an opportunity. And next weekend is a real opportunity to initiate something exciting, profoundly creative, and possibly deeply fulfilling and transformative. So if you're looking to transform something in your life, that's a really great time to do it. Okay, that's really an active action. I'm going to take action here to do the following, and that's what we like. That's what we want to see. Even though Mars is conjuncting Uranus, that's sort of the match being lit. And the other two connections to the outer planets are smooth aspects, and these are really helping us open the door to the next stage of our life, right? So this is all pretty positive if you don't let that Mars Uranus get to you. If you do, and this is all happening. They are ruled by Mercury, which is going to be retrograde. So, could words be misleading, misspoken? Please be careful with that. That's the one warning I must give you this week. And keep your temper in check. Neptune is stationing. It will retrograde on the 7th of July, which is next Tuesday, not this week. More on that as we go through next weekend's podcast. I am spending one of those days, either Friday the 3rd or the Saturday the 4th, at the coffee fair. They get it right. The coffee people get it right. And it's usually big. And last year it was so huge. It was unbelievable. The line to get in was crazy, and it was an enormous spectacle in Barrio Escalante. And we went to Barrio Escalante to the hall where they were having it, and they're having it in the same place again. And the coffee fair is amazing because you get to taste all the coffees, and you get to choose which ones you want to buy, and ones that are from different parts of the country that you might not have access to normally. Really, really fun and exciting, and you get to talk to the coffee people. And Monica was saying that the coffee people are snobs. I said, I bet they're like wine enthusiasts. But the coffee is superb. So we get to taste some of the best coffees here and buy some of the best coffees in Costa Rica. And we've been going for years, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But they won't get it wrong. They won't get it wrong. So it won't be like the chocolate fair. In the meantime, if you are interested in learning about where Jupiter in Leo is going to affect you and how it's going to be in your life, well, then connect with me through my website, for one, which is thegoldenastrologer.com. You can book online right from the website and choose a session with me for astrology. You can also choose a Reiki session. You can also choose to spend more time with me doing expansion mentoring, which goes on for 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. And then, if you'd like to find me on Instagram, it's The Golden Astrologer. You can also click book now in my profile on Instagram and book an appointment with me. I expect to be on Instagram quite a bit this coming week because there is so much going on. So look for me there. And I just want to thank you all for listening. I have much gratitude for all of you showing up every week, tuning in, finding out what's going on, sending me a message. And you can message me through Instagram. You can DM me. I'm on Facebook too, but I don't spend much time there. But info@thegoldenastrologer.com, deb@debmcbride.com. You can write to me. You can say hi. You can ask a question. You can tell me what your experience is of Mars, Uranus, and the beginnings of Jupiter in Leo, right? So thank you for listening. Gratitude to each and every one of you. If you're celebrating 4th of July next weekend, please be safe. Please be mindful. And have a beautiful, beautiful, splendid week. Last few days of June, moving into July. Jupiter moves into Leo. Let's go. So thank you for listening.